In this presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about the Elizabethan worldview, their vision of order and chaos, and how that impacted Shakespearean tragedy, specifically with Macbeth. In order to understand a little bit about the impact of Macbeth's crime, it's kind of helpful to understand exactly how the Elizabethans saw the universe and the world around them. First of all, they believed that the universe was absolutely ordered, that all things that had been created could be ranked. And this was an idea that was known as the chain of being, and it actually originated back in ancient Greece, back from the time of Plato and Aristotle, and later on was adapted to Christian beliefs throughout the Renaissance. The idea is that the world is like a chain or a ladder, and that all created things are linked and that they have to be in a very specific order. And as long as everything stays in its assigned place, in the place where it was created, then all will be well with the world. So the chain of being, general being, went like this. God was at the top, followed by the angels, then man, then the animals, then plants, then inorganic matter. That would be rocks and things that just exist on earth. And then after that was just chaos. That would include down to hell and to the devils and all of the other demonic kinds of ideas. And this worldview affected everything for the Elizabethans, the way that they thought about their religious beliefs, the way they organized their political systems, the way people behaved within social systems, and what limited scientific understandings they had, they also tried to make fit into this idea of the chain of being worldview. Now, within each one of those broader categories were also a whole bunch of subdivisions. So each category also could be divided from high to low. So if you looked at the universe and the planets, the sun would be seen as the top of that particular chain. In the animal world, the lion was seen at the top of the chain. If you looked at metals, then gold would be the most valuable or the highest. And mankind divided up equally, or not equally, but mankind divided up also underneath these kinds of subdivisions. So at the top of mankind would be the king or queen or the rulers, followed by the nobility, followed by the knights who did the fighting and took care of the kingdom, followed by the gentlemen who owned land, and then the people who ran professions and trades, and finally down to the peasants and the criminals and the people who had no connections. Now, if you think of your classic Shakespearean tragedy, usually what happens is someplace in Act 1, an event occurs that upsets the natural order. If you remember last year from Romeo and Juliet, it was all the fighting that was going on in the streets that was upsetting the order of things, and the prince has to come out and make that big decree. Very often what the precipitating event is in Act 1 is the killing of a king of some kind. Hamlet starts that way, and Macbeth, as we see, starts that way as well. And then the protagonist's job is to set things right. And in a tragedy, the protagonist is not able to overcome the obstacles, and usually through some fatal flaw in their own character, they die. But with their death, order is once again restored, and everything is back in balance at the end of the play. Now we can see how this concept of a precipitating event that upsets the natural order plays out in Macbeth. When Macbeth kills King Duncan, he's violating the natural order in at least 3 different ways. First of all, he is not as highly ranked as the king. He was not born within that chain, and so he should not do anything that causes him to be ranked higher than the king. He also allows his wife to dominate, and unfortunately in the Elizabethan worldview, the men were still superior and the women were supposed to obey. But Macbeth, by allowing his wife to kind of order him around and lead him into these kinds of temptations, we see a reversal of what's supposed to be the natural order with the husband taking charge of the wife. And then Macbeth also takes the word of the witches over God. Banquo tries to warn him that these witches and this seeing the future and fortune telling is not godly, and Macbeth kind of ignores it. He allows his ambition and his pleasure at hearing that he's going to be all of these great things to let him go ahead and act on what the witches are telling him, even though the witches are probably not from the religious side of the proper balance of the equation. So when Macbeth kills Duncan, he actually commits a cosmic crime. It's not just a personal thing that just affects him and Duncan. It actually causes this ripple within the natural order. And we see the entire universe within the play starting to reflect this disorder that Macbeth creates. And only the death of Macbeth is going to be able to restore order at the end of the play. So when you get back to class, we're going to break down very specifically Act 2, Scene 4, and we're going to look at some of the examples of disorder in the universe that are reported on the night that Duncan is killed. So think about that, and we will see you back in class to look at Act 2, Scene 4.